Hey guys, the podcast will always be free. If you go into the description or the top comment, there's a locals, a Patreon, a buy me a coffee, a Cash App, a PayPal. Legitimately, $1 a month makes the world of a difference. And I know you're thinking, no, it doesn't. It literally does. It keeps the show going. It's why it's so free flowing and hectic and frankly unprofessional and vulgar, but it's the reason why it's free and why it's fun. Please, if you can, donate $1. Thank you. And we are recording on Saturday, January 31st, 2026 at 10:08, 10:09 a.m. Eastern Time. Mr. Ian Burlingame, General Holt, General Blaine, whatever you'd like to go by, the good man, Colonel Watkins, Colonel Murray. And can you just immediately pick up from where we were, Steve, what you just saying about potential bank or I guess general bank failures as well as, yeah, I saw yesterday, I think yesterday morning, there was all these like glitches, I think in London, like the stock exchange, and then the price of silver drops like 40% in a single day. Steve, could you just go with what you were saying about hackers and all that
Yeah,
shit?
I was just saying that Okta's got they've got a vector through Okta to harvest credentials, and if you use if you use a multi-factor authentication, you should really um, if, make sure you're not using that protocol right now until they get it sorted out. I think it has been sorted out, but like I said, I'll post the article so people can go see it. But over the past 6 months, we've seen, especially over the last year, we saw a lot of ransomware attacks and a lot of attacks in logistics and 3PLs, which is third party logistics, a lot of retailers. And now we're starting to see it in transportation companies. So we're seeing ransomware, we're seeing multiple attack surfaces too, which is interesting because um, the social engineering piece has gotten more sophisticated with AI. I figured it would get more sophisticated on the reconnaissance where they go out and probe your network because AI could do it without, tripping your sensors. But we're not seeing that. We're seeing more social engineering coming out of it. And the social engineering has been highly effective, which is really amazing because it sounds like a real person. It responds like a real person. There's a little bit of a lag. And yeah, and I've gotten some very, very interesting social engineering attacks just in the last year. Like I'll get a text message that's supposedly from my bank. And my bank has a very specific script when they respond to a call. They never call you. You always have to call them. But in this case, I get a text saying, "Hey, there's fraud in your account." Then the phone rings and it shows up as a number that's from my bank, but it's really not. It's somebody reading the script. And the script's almost to a T real. They just miss a few words, and then they ask you for your account number. So you should never get prompted by your bank ever for your account number. And if you ever get a text or you get an email from that looks like it's from your bank, pick up the phone and call the bank. Don't answer the phone, say, "Hey, I'll call you back," and then go to their webpage, call the bank, and start asking questions about your account. Or go into the bank, but never ever respond to a call. And there's been a flurry of those just in the last 6 months that that I've seen. The other one that I've seen, which this one I have fun with, is I get a call from Deputy Dog from Maricopa County Sheriff, and there's a warrant for my arrest. And that's not how that's supposed to go. And they want to keep you on the phone, right? And they want to
Yeah,
they
you'll
want you
never
to,
take me alive.
yeah, they want you to drive into the sheriff's office, and about halfway there, they prompt you to pay a fine because your court your court date was adjudicated, you weren't there, so you have to pay a fine, but you can't pay it at the courthouse. You have to go to a kiosk and pay it through Venmo. So
Oh,
I can get more into that, but I get this call from this guy, and he's like, "Mr. Murray, there's a warrant for your arrest." I'm like, "Really?
hell
That's not
yeah.
how this works, right?" And he's like, "Well, there's a warrant for your arrest. I need you to come in." I'm like, "Okay, I'm getting in my car right now." I was going to my butcher, so I got in
Yeah.
my car and started driving to my butcher. And he's like, "How far away are you?" I think I'm about 20 minutes away. Let me look. So I map it out to my butcher. Yeah, I'm 20 minutes away. I'll be there in 20 minutes. So he's talking to me the whole time. And he's like, "If you get off the phone, I'm going to have to send deputies out." I'm like, "That's too bad because my phone really sucks and my connection may just drop off at any time." So I hung up the phone a few times to see if he'd call me back. And he called me back. Drove all the way to my butcher's. "Guys, where are you?" I'm at my butcher's. And then he just went off. He's telling me that they're going to come roll me up. I'm like, "Well, there's a sheriff's deputy right 2 cars away. I'll go talk to him." And I hung up the phone and walked over there. The guy's like, "Oh yeah, we're getting a lot of those calls right now." Happens all the time.
what
But
I
it tells
found.
you if you didn't know and you never been a part of that, been around that system at all and work with that system, you wouldn't know how it's supposed to work. And they're not going to tell you they're going to come roll you up. They're going to roll you up. And usually they wait for you to do a speeding infraction or something like that, and then they roll you up when they pull you over. So
we had this. I had the same thing. I hung up. I called the police department, and they said, "Yeah, we're getting this all the time."
Yeah, no, you gotta fuck them back. If the only time I've ever got something like that from the bank, I called the bank and they're like, "And what's the number?" And I gave them, and they're like, "Can you like do this, do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I get it." And like the next day, they're like, they got like a I don't know, a gratitude email. They're like, "Thanks, we like pinned that down." I'm like, "Yeah, fuck those people. You got to go to war back. Like you can't." But I don't know. Is that tied into general what you were saying beforehand? Wasn't there a bank failure yesterday?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the names of the banks because they were really small ones. Usually those are the most consequential because they're tiny and they're small and you've never heard their name before, but they've got assets out the wazoo because they're part of some stupid laundering deal. But what we see is we saw a couple go yesterday. And there's just a lot of financial madness happening around, things like the unwinding of the Japan carry trade. Bond markets are silly. And then the grand manipulation Friday of the metals markets. I think gold was down at one point, down by about $600, and then $40 on silver. You could cynically just say, well, that's the grand shakedown. This is the last chance for some of the banks that are over levered on shorts on silver and gold to exit their positions or to survive this. But you could also say that it's just there to scare the crap out of Main Street and shake them out of their silver. There's a whole variety of reasons, but what's more interesting to me is that the actions are happening. That this is an event. It's a milestone. It should be tracked as such. And say, look, we've got an event. Do we see a banking thing on Monday? A lot of folks are talking that way. Just don't know. But what it indicates to me is it's not a normal thing. It is an anomaly. It needs to be tracked, and it points to something. And you all may have more insights into what you think that is. But when I look at Minneapolis, when I look at some of these other events around the country, I wouldn't separate all these events. And then we get back to what Steven's saying about the cyber stuff. Well, this makes sense to me. So that you would do the pile on if there's going to be something in the banking sector. But again, these are just puzzle pieces in a box, and I'm sitting here like a little kid just staring at them, and I don't particularly understand how they fit yet.
Sounded like a Marine.
Yeah, well, I'm eating the crayons and nothing magic's happening.
Yeah, good crayon here. It seems like it's like closing past the sell or like overselling it. If silver had dropped by like $10, it'd be like, yeah, well, also went up really, even 20. Once it went below 90, I was like, hold the fuck on. And I started looking at it and I was like, oh, this is coordinated. They're doing something. This isn't real. And aren't all these banks out like a record amount if they can't, cover their asses?
Yeah.
Man, wouldn't this be really beneficial if this is like the most you've ever owed? Wouldn't it be really beneficial to temporarily, even for a day, cut the cost down by 30%? Would that not be a window that you'd want?
While doing profit taking, so you can cover short positions.
Yeah, you play it both ways.
Because the way the banking system, having been in the banking industry, the final 2025 contracts that get rolled over to 2026 happen mid to late January. It all happens before the end of January. So I suspect there's a good amount of profit taking. I suspect there's a good amount of short covering with respect to, the hacking and all of that. That's just, one of the things we all need to be aware of is that when criminals can't get easy money, they up their game. They don't stop trying to steal. Right. And when you have a nation state, or a former imperial system that's getting gutted at the banking level and the asset level, don't think that there isn't going to be, ethical hacking, shall we say, right? I think that's what we call it. But state level hacking to try and plug some of the gaps in its budgets and its financing, et cetera, through, criminal activities. bureaucratic systems, imperial systems become extraordinarily criminal, openly criminally extractive as they are collapsing. With respect to the overall banking and banking failures, in order to remove the remnants of the British Empire, this Roman outpost, you have to go after the banks, because that is the British Empire. And some of these banks, very much blamed to what you said, are very small banks. They have very long histories, however. And in the banking world, it's not always about assets under management. It's about all of the SWIFT and other signaling messaging systems that you have codes for. That way you can either launder money or you intermediary for some major transaction that nobody wants, they don't want anybody to see, et cetera. And some of these banks are in strange places, by the way, right, around the world. But if you're going after the British Empire, you have to break silver. You have to force people to close out contracts in silver, because the British Empire is still priced in silver. And some of these old banks, particularly these smaller, older banks, would get caught up in all of that. That would be a sign.
Colonel Watkins?
Well, I'm listening to this conversation and I'm immediately drawn back to the money laundering and how the CIA and the mafia in the savings and loan debacle. Yeah. They took all of what was basically generally small savings and loans, and one of the first things the Reagan administration did when they came in was change a lot of significant banking regulations, one of which was creating this thing called brokered deposits, which allowed the CIA and the mafia to take union pension funds and deposit it in a small bank. And then they got to decide, regardless of what that bank wanted to do, who got loans off of that. That's why it was referred to as brokered deposits. And they just money laundered this money to themselves. Yeah. And they invested it in real estate. And so it ended up, yes, art, other big in investment. And it ended up at the end of the day, when all of the savings and loans collapsed, they were 10 times richer. And we got stuck with a $200 billion bill as taxpayers in the United States. So it's like they say, history doesn't repeat, but it definitely rhymes. We ran across in the Isle of Jersey, which I was not aware of as being one of the most
Spider's web.
Yes, one of the most used, because they have this weird trust system, and all of the Paul Helliwells that created the CIA bank called Castle Bank, all were using these trusts with this money generated from the savings and loan to go park it there in the names of their wives and their kids. So even if they spent a couple of years in jail, they still had their fortunes.
Correct. That's the only thing that, I had this conversation with Tom yesterday. The only thing these people care about is impoverishment. They don't care if they die, and they don't care if they go to jail. What they care about is impoverishment. Yeah. And so we're going to have to do that. Now, Colonel Watkins, to what you're saying, when Clinton came in, they did the 94 Banking Deregulation Acts, which brought down Glass-Steagall, basically, and allowed investment banks and investment firms to commingle their operations, which took the money laundering to a whole nother scale. Yeah. Because, as I think we touched on previous, what is made through theft and illicit is 1/10 to 1/20th what they make off stock manipulation and the stock markets and artificial IPOs, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, what I didn't realize was that the CIA had front companies that all of their assets, not civilian paid, like our federal tax dollar paid pension funds, but all of their assets, and there's tens of thousands of them, when they pay them to go on these missions, they were setting up front companies, i.e. banks, and they were they had pension funds for these assets. And there were billions of dollars in them, and they were using them to invest and manipulate the stock market.
Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a colored organization, 3 letters, starts with a T, ends with an O. unfortunately, they've been involved in some of these things as well. So it's not just the CIA; it's also
no. The CIA
side.
is emblematic. I generically, because I'm an American, talk about the CIA. All of the intelligence apparatus around the world do these exact same things.
Yeah.
What starts the T and ends with an O?
Oh, nothing. Just an organization. Does similar stuff.
I'm just trying to think of it. I can't think of any of that.
The issue is that, again, people look at all the illicit stuff. Again, that's like cover for action, cover for status, right? Because we're all paying attention to that. And we're not looking to the guys in the $3,000 Armani suits, right, at these private equity funds primarily, but also brokers, broker agents, registered agents, right? So you can do securities offerings. The fraud that happens globally on global stock markets, it just dwarfs the amount of money made through illicit. I mean, like illicit is a tiny fraction compared, in all the forms of illicit, as bad as they are, pales in comparison to stock manipulation or fake IPOs, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, you find that to your point in the Carlyle group. If you do any research on the Carlyle group, it'll blow your mind.
Is that Kissinger's?
Well, it was
5 Bs, right? The 5 Bs, Baker, Bush, and
Rubenstein. Yeah. David Rubenstein.
He was the guy in charge, but the people behind him, and the Saudis, what is that guy's name? Talil bin whatever, one of the
Alaweed,
He was
previous majority shareholder of Twitter. Yeah.
The same people that were behind the BCCI Bank, which the UAE.
Oh boy, I know them.
Yes.
I do.
Personally. And George Bush Sr. had an account there, as did Noriega and Saddam Hussein and all of the really weird heads of state, because they were all in on this.
Yeah. And it's funny how their wealth grew exponentially once they were a member, and they,
well, that's
BCCI.
Look at Congress,
amazing how that works.
That's
look
a
at
coincidence,
Congress,
Stephen.
Right? We're looking at these big folks, but look at Congress.
Oh yeah,
Nancy Pelosi. Look at
everything's a revenue stream for those retards. So,
well, they're all participating in it, right?
They are stock picker of the century.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is why I always put that crime tape up anytime I make a post about Congress. It's a crime scene. It is a crime scene.
Well, they've become the intelligence agencies via the politicians have become the mafia. They are now crime. Because if you look at Delaware, so everybody was talking about Delaware when Biden was in office, and he's openly come out and said that I put everybody in office at the state apparatus and at the city apparatus where I live. Everybody is affiliated with me somehow. That's a mob.
Yeah, that's the Irish mob. It's the Irish mob. It's Tammany Hall.
Lindsey Graham has that in South Carolina. John McCain had that down here in Arizona. It's
over a century on, right? You guys remember the movie, Jimmy Stewart movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
Yeah.
1930s, 1940s, great movie.
Long time ago, yeah.
And when I was at the Old Guard, I lived in Georgetown. I used to go down to Mr. Smith's restaurant every once in a while. It's not there anymore, unfortunately, but all of this goes back over a century. All of it, right? This all goes back. This takeoff, right, goes back to prohibition. It's the mob state, right? Banks and the financial system realized they can make more money by flooding illicit cash into the system and then using that cash to go play the stock market game, the insurance game, all these other, high finance games. And all you needed was the illusion of an economy.
Correct. And it's funny, doing the research that I've done, it all traces back to that. The Brockens, the Pritzkers.
Yeah.
The Pritzkers were, as a family, the largest deposit at Castle Bank, which was set up by Paul Helliwell, which was CIA and a way of money laundering Southeast Asia, drug opium profits. And you go to AIG. AIG started off as Star in China, where all the opium was. Yeah. And Star was part of that group over in China, and it morphs into AIG. And I come to realize that every single one of the really bad people. They owned an industry, a bank, and an insurance company. That's that's kind of their model. Because if, like in the case of you want to demolish something that costs too much money, you take out an insurance policy on it. You don't have to do asbestos abatement or anything like that. And this insurance company then makes you whole. So they literally have a lock on this entire
I've helped set up these structures actually when I was in investment banking days, right? So,
is this a confession part of the podcast?
Yeah, well, I left that world and I had to go hunt humans to feel better about myself. That's how dirty.
That's one of my. There's a handful of quotes over 2,000 episodes I love, and one of them is EM's. I was in finance for however many years, and it was so gross I had to go kill people to get the taste out of my mouth.
It's the truth. Oh, I missed that one. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I wrote the series, called The Mob State, tracking, Colonel Watkins, like you've been doing, tracing all this back. For me, I started inside the banking system, the investment banking system in the late 90s, early 2000s. The more and more you look at it, the more and more you realize we haven't had a real economy in 70 years. It's been an illicit economy. Everything else is just an illusion to keep the illusion going. And they're using the cash from the illicit trade to play this sophisticated financial game that's all fraud. And there's a great documentary called The China Hustle about, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it was about how U.S. private equity companies and registered agents were going to China and finding some tiny little company and then writing up, which is what I was as an analyst. I was the guy who did the due diligence and did the analysis and all of that. And they would write up that this is a $50 billion company.
Yep.
They do all the security stuff, and then they'll float it on a U.S. exchange for $50 billion, $100 billion. Companies may be worth $3 million.
That's right.
Maybe.
Or less.
And there's in the U.S. right now, even today, even though China's been shutting down these companies, and the U.S. has been doing it as well under Trump's first administration, it's something like $2 trillion in the U.S. stock markets right now is these fraudulent companies. That's in pension funds and retirement funds. And that's just the U.S. That doesn't even take into account Europe.
And they tried to do that in the 90s with Russia.
Yes, correct.
And that's
they got away with it for a while. Yeah,
they did. But that's the whole Browder and Safra who mysteriously burns up while he's got a SF guard that's pretending to be his nurse. And the Magnitsky Act came out of that. And Putin shut it down.
Not just Putin though. That this is something. This brings up a point, right?
But Putin is only because of that.
Oh, absolutely, no, absolutely. But this brings up a point, Colonel. That's for all of us, right? People look at Putin and say Putin did this. Putin would not be alive if there wasn't real Russian power behind Putin to physically keep him alive.
Yeah. Correct.
Right.
That's true today.
And it's true today. This is the same with Xi. Xi didn't force him; they would have just killed him. Right? Yeah. He would have choked on a fish bone and some soup, right? Some Heilongjiang, right? So one of the things that we need to realize again is the Praetorian problem, right? That we've talked about numerous times, and that Putin was able to, the Russians address that Praetorian problem that allowed Putin to go out in front and work with the others behind the scenes. Same thing's happening with Xi. We need to be aware of the same thing with Trump. Yes, they tried to kill him, et cetera. They're never going to stop. They're never going to stop trying to kill others around him. And this effort that we are about to try and restore and reset all of this is at least a 40-year journey. And that means that we need to really constantly, as a people, think about the physical threat to these people.
Yes.
Right? Because again, Putin would not have been able to be Putin if he didn't have real power behind him.
But he said at the best of the start of the show, right? They up their game when they feel like they're not achieving their aims.
Yes.
So you were spot on earlier. What I think is interesting is the timing of all of this, right? that gold gets up above 5,000, and all of a sudden we start seeing cyber, we start seeing bank failures, and we see this
glitches. System didn't work.
Yeah.
Exchange couldn't open.
Yeah.
Larry left the remote at home.
Yeah.
Or sat on it.
Yeah. It's like I've been watching the Epstein files all morning, and I didn't really pay attention to social media at all yesterday. I did some flame posting because that's, it's just part of my enjoyment of the day.
You got to toss a grenade.
Although I think Colonel Watkins has it down to a science. She's a lot better at it than I am of flaming people.
I call it shit posting.
Yeah, it is shit posting, but I was trying to be nice, so we'll just call it that.
Yeah.
We're seeing. I think it's. I'll just say it this way. I think it's interesting. The Epstein files finally come out, and the only people you see in it are Trump and Republicans. You don't see any Democrats in it, and they are the worst offenders and the biggest pedophiles. And I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Right?
This was always going to happen. They've had 10 years to doctor everything.
Oh, yeah.
This is General Pachepa, right? Lieutenant General Ian Pachepa, who wrote the book Disinformation. This is what you do. You put little documents in here and there, right? The other piece, the other thing that we need to be very careful about the Epstein list is a whole lot of people were put in that list that had no part of any of these things, because that's another thing you do is guilt by association.
Yeah. So how many times
contaminate the evidence?
Yeah.
Correct.
I was just going to say, how many times has that evidence changed hands over the years? So you don't know what's real, what's not real. And I will say that I think it's interesting now that they're saying that Epstein didn't traffic kids. He was torturing and murdering kids, potentially murdering kids. Absolutely. They were doing that. They were doing genetic experiments. They were doing all kinds of stuff. That I find it's interesting that that's coming out now, because EM and I had this conversation 50 times, and you're like, it's not that bad. I'm like, it's really that bad. So I'm waiting to see what's next and why now, right? It's just like the stock market. Why now? Why timing right now?
Here, let me just interject on one of the catalysts to the week you saw. They really, really did not like the raid in Atlanta and the 700 boxes that got lifted up.
Really
and Tulsi being on scene. If you look at, I always look at how do they react to things, and if it's too much, if it's like too profound, like Christine Lagarde losing her shit at Lutnick telling her that it's over.
Yeah.
You've got Mark Warner, who should know better than to run down the hall, grab a microphone, and scream bloody murder because Tulsi Gabbard, a free American, has put herself in Atlanta. And when you see irrational outbursts like that, it's not that he's trying to make a case that Tulsi Gabbard has no business being near an FBI raid where there's evidence of election fraud. It's the foreign interference part, and it's his role in it. Right. And it's the layers of protection that these arrogant, mindless bots have that they're starting to see melt away. Mm-hmm. But this is a beautiful thing, because what I expect, my expectation of things like that going forward is I believe they're going to start turning on each other. I think that's the next chapter that we go into.
Let's please let the barbarians fight at the gates. I can't wait for that. I'm getting popcorn for it.
Two men enter, one man leaves.
Right.
Exactly. On that vein, though,
physics.
I think it bears mentioning that the DNI is doing her job. She's doing what she's supposed. That's what the DNI should be doing.
Oh, she's awesome.
Foreign interference, right? And I looked at the data from the Cyber Ninja captures after the audit here in 2021, and I can tell you that just the cursory review of the EAS servers showed 800 anonymous connections just to the box in Arizona, just one box. So and here's the other thing about those Dominion systems: you can instantiate two operating systems at the same time, and you would never know it. They only see one operating system in front of them, but in the back, the operating system back here is running an algorithm that is a weighted ratio. So for every vote going to one candidate, 1.2 goes to, it's like 0.7 to that candidate, 1.3 to the other candidate. That's how they manipulated that.
You don't even need an operating system. You can do it on the floating point, and you tweak the floating points. You can even do it in silicon if you want to.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Watkins.
Colonel Watkins. My apologies.
Well, I wanted to go back before we leave the Epstein stuff. And I want people to pay attention to the emails and stuff about confidential human sources, because that's very, very important. What I have discovered in my research is there's a reason why they use particular confidential human sources. And the majority of the time, those people are criminals themselves.
Yes.
And because of their criminality, they will have sealed indictments on them. And they will get them to be labeled as a confidential human source, and they levy that sealed indictment over them to have them produce in quote unquote intelligence.
Yep, whatever they want.
That feeds this narrative that they want to project.
Yep.
And if the confidential human source screws up and doesn't deliver, and they get paid more, the more salacious stuff that they provide, then they unseal the indictment and they go off to jail.
Right.
If you don't understand, and I'm amazed at how many people will silo this information. They will say the judicial system is screwed up, the FBI is screwed up, the CIA is screwed up, and never be able to see the crossbreeding of all of that when you come to informants and confidential human sources.
So Roxanne, what you're talking about, I think, is an incapacitated government will hold up. The president's main effort, I think, is starting to come through the fog now. The president's main effort, because we've all talked about there's no season of accountability. Pam's not doing anything. This is a mess. And here comes the shot clock boiling down to the midterms. We're screwed. Well, hold up. If Atlanta evolves from Maduro to Atlanta to most of those people in the swamp don't hold elected office at all. They're holding a desk. And that they're compromised, well, then in the next 90 days, you may well find there are hardly any incumbents to go back to their seats. And if that's the case, there will be no impeachment of Trump. His main job is he's just got to stay alive.
Correct.
But if you want to fix this government, to get it arrested away from the devil's legions, as EM says, then I think that this looks like the main effort that the president's pursuing. And a couple of folks that I get to talk to in the shadows it is all about 2020 because it wraps them all up. And
I've heard the same thing.
It's the best effort. There are so many vectors of effort that you could do to go after the illegality.
Yeah.
But taking it from cartels to Maduro to the 2020 wraps up the quickest and can put us on a better track. I don't, it's fraught with risk. Who knows if it's going to be successful? But I think now that the fog is lifting, that's what it looks like to me.
What if Maduro is an informant?
He is.
Well, that was a hey, come and get me, boys. I got shit to say.
I know all of you know that, but I'm saying that for the audience's sake because I knew where that question will come. Somebody asked me that the other day. I'm like, absolutely. I'm like, that dude looked like he was going to Club Med. That's the guy who made the deal.
His wife
even
and
more importantly, that if you look at that power transition, those Cubans were already dead before our guys got there.
Oh yeah,
I agree.
Venezuelan army did that, right? And then they made sure, and then we use the U.S. as cover. I want to go back to the Georgia thing just real quick, and then hand it over, right? But Letitia James, there's a pot of NGO monies in Brooklyn, and that's been funding Letitia James and all of her efforts. And this guy Patrick Ryan, I think his name's Patrick Ryan, politician, low-level politician in New York, et cetera. And they've been going all over the country doing lawfare. Patrick does the funding to help low-level folks get into all the down ballot, the low part of the down ballot. and Letitia James goes after the lawfare, and is that so the lawfare across the country has been coordinated out of New York, and out of the Southern District of New York, out of the AG of New York, et cetera. That's okay. What I suspect is that the equivalent operation for the illegality in the voting was all run out for the country, was all run out of Georgia, out of Fulton County. So I suspect that what was happening there in Fulton County, and what they're going to pull from there is going to go to Arizona. It's going to go to Minnesota. It's going to go. It's going to trace trails because that was the HQ for the voter fraud in the United States.
And it's going right back to Brennan and Obama.
Do you remember when the election fishiness just got underway, and then Governor Kemp, and I'm a Georgian, and I am no fan of this man, but Governor Kemp's daughter, her that girl's boyfriend
died,
disappeared in a massive car explosion. So the car accident looked like
it was more like a bomb.
It was more C4 than you've ever seen go up.
Looked like the 1970s.
I think that was a message to make sure Kemp stayed on reservation with Raffensperger.
Correct. Well, what was that judge who had her husband and son shot in the door?
Well,
that's right.
Don't forget the Georgia investigator also suicided himself.
Yes.
Oh.
Into the car bomb.
It was too important. So what Ian's saying, I think, bears out completely, because if they had lost what was going on in Atlanta, they would have lost all of the swing states. They would have lost the entire mechanism.
So let me go back to Maduro real quick. The one thing that I firmly believe now, having read the CIA rushed release of stolen elections written by some really weird people with CIA people behind them, and pinning it basically all on Venezuela, is the entire book is a farce.
Yes.
They didn't even know at the very beginning of the book, this is how poorly written the book is. They said that General Franks was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You see this thing right here in my shadow box? That's General Frank's coin that I got because he was my boss at CENTCOM. So the fact that they don't even do very much research into this book shows you how rushed it was. And the entire book is written on Trust Me, Bro. So there is every bit of it. And I believe that
it's hysterical.
Yes. I'm telling you, we're doing a series on Badlands Media about this book. Every part of the book is a lie. And I think that they knew, the DNI knew what the story was going to be. Yes. And I think they all shit a brick when Maduro was picked up, because they know that that is absolutely not true. And that was a signal to their narrative that the Smartmatic, which is kind of what they say is behind all of it, and you know how it ends up in Sequoia and Dominion and all of those other iterations. They keep their whole premise is based on the fact that Smartmatic was created in Venezuela, when in fact it was created in Miami, Florida by expats from Venezuela that created a company registered in Delaware, which we just talked about, and set up in Florida by people that were chased out of the country by Chavez. So their entire narrative, once you start digging into it, is based on garbage. And I think the picking up of Maduro was like, oh, you mean this guy right here? Yeah, well, we're going to tuck him away over here.
It's even more powerful than that, because we didn't do what normally happens in this case. We didn't do a regime change. We kept the current regime in place. Yes. We acted in accordance with their constitution, yes. Right? And what does that mean? Well, we're not going to see the burning of all kinds of information, all kinds of the data trail, because that's what happens in a regime change. That's why you do a violent regime change. So I can go burn all these records and I can destroy these computers and et cetera, et cetera. So they didn't get that either. So, one wonders, the tankers that were rolled up, right? Of course, there's probably gold and silver, et cetera. And somebody's trying to get oil. Some general's trying to get oil out to get a last big payment, whatever. But some general, you generals. But, I would also suspect very much there was information, documents, records, files, etc., on those on the ships that were seized, and that we have that as well.
Oh, I'm sure it goes all the way back to Chavez. I'm sure it does, and they've got it all. Yeah, I think what's interesting too. I want to go back to something that General Holt said. They didn't like Fulton County, so this Epstein information comes out and points right at Trump.
Correct.
And I wanted to circle back to that because that's such a salient point in all of this. It's like when they really get into deep shit, they bring out Obama or Michelle, and they don't bring the Clintons out anymore. Notice how those two lizards are there in the background, and
nobody still wants alive? To hear
from those. Oh yeah, they're still alive. They're still feeding off children.
Baby blood.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that you to bring that back full circle. That all this Epstein stuff comes out just points at Republicans. There's no Democrats at all in there. Not that there's a left and right. We all agree there's no left and right. But I just think it's very interesting that the only people that are named by name are people in the current cabinet and people around Trump, nobody else. And there was a reference to George H.W. Bush having raped a male teenager. And that goes all the way back to the Boys Town scandal.
The Franklin scandal.
Yeah. That goes way back. I knew about that. Yeah, I got told about that as a lieutenant when he was in office. And I'll never forget it because it was some general that said, that guy's a pedophile, right? I'm like, it is very nonchalantly. And there's a picture of the president of the basketball on it. Said, that's an interesting picture. The guy's a pedophile, right? He likes little boys. And then he just went off to something else. I'm like, wow. So everybody knew back then. So imagine how many other sitting senators and congressmen all the way back to the 80s that were pedophiles and a part of this system.
Well,
so I want to be curious to see.
I want to caution something, right? I want to caution something. I'm not saying that that's not true, but it is too easy to fake all that and make accusations. So then you have, the way in which you play information warfare at its greatest game is somebody doesn't have to actually have done something. You just have to label them with it and get that whisper out there.
Well, there's that.
Some people are going to listen to that whisper. Some people are going to pick up on that whisper. Some people are going to want to believe that. And then nothing else you say about what they're actually doing will that person really pay attention to because they're fixated on that thing, whether it's true or not.
Yeah, in this case of Bush, it's definitely true.
Yeah.
There's witnesses. There's witnesses. Yeah. There's kids that were trafficked to the White House in the Franklin scandal. It was investigated by a senator who mysteriously dies in a plane crash. There's all kinds of there's books that's been written about that.
Yeah.
So this brings up another fundamental
Some of it
problem.
I saw myself when I was in DC as a captain. I saw some of this myself first.
So we got another fundamental problem then. The other fundamental problem we have is the Secret Service.
You think?
Because they have to be involved if any of these things are going to happen like this.
Absolutely.
That means the Secret Service is trafficking. That's really what it means.
And that's a vulnerability to the president, and
that is a vulnerability to the nation. Yes.
So the Secret Service, if you go back and do the research in the JFK assassination, definitely involved. And there's been so many nefarious things about the Secret Service. They were implicated in the plot to assassinate JFK in Chicago, where they threw one of their own under the bus and he ended up in prison because he tried to tell everybody what was going on. And they framed him. So the Secret Service is definitely
Devil's Legions. They are Devil Legions asset. This is what you do. This is what people need to understand, right? People need to understand that there is, in this liberal democratic system, the way in which they have power is they always control your security. They don't need to own the assets. They don't need to sit in the positions of power. They don't need to do anything, but they make sure that they own your security. And this is true for ultra high net worth people as well.
Yep. It's true for the crown. It's true for Xi Jinping. It's true in so many capitals where it's like, we've got a very close eye on this one.
Correct. And so what just happened in Venezuela, I think, threw a shock into the system that is completely only related to the Devil's Legion's threat. Those 39 Cubans were a hit squad against Maduro, against Chavez, if they ever got out of line. And somehow they got taken out. And it wasn't the Americans, it was the Venezuelans that did it before we even got there, right? Our guys are good, really good, but not that good, not that depth of that operation. But the point being is that what I believe, and this is what's happening in China right now, what had to happen for Putin in order for Putin to even be alive today, is I think that what happened in Venezuela shocked the Praetorians, that their devil's legions can get taken out, and then power can actually, individuals in positions of power can act independently for once in the first time in 3 centuries or 4 centuries. Right? It was the first time the Praetorian Guards that I know of that wasn't a palace coup and everybody died. No. Power stayed in place. New person came into power. It was all done constitutionally, but the security guards were all dead.
And what I find interesting about that is, by the way, that was a brilliant move. I just have to say, because the first thing the press tried to go after was, and this is the one time I'm going to give them credit for actually winning the information war, is the press went right to, when are U.S. troops going to go on the ground? And they're like, we're not putting troops on the ground. We don't need to. We're not doing that. We don't have a good record there. And then Marco Rubio followed that up in the Senate as well as in the press. And it took the wind out of their sails. So they moved right off to something else, which brilliant move, by the way, from an information perspective, brilliant move.
Wait a minute. So there was no sonic weapons, no magic sonic weapons? Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't know about that. I can neither confirm nor deny that the discombobulator was.
I know there wasn't, but it was fun for me.
Space demodulator.
Let me believe. I'm the kid. I still believe in Santa. Let me earmuffs. Don't tell me they used UFOs to get there.
Lane, I might have introduced you to an Air Force colonel who was the head of that program.
Right.
He's retired now, of course, right? But I might have introduced you to one that was the head of that program. And we do have targeted energy weapons, but they're
we do.
Not,
no,
they're
absolutely
not magic,
we do. They just don't work that
like
way.
That. Correct. Yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Yep. What was humorous for me out of that whole thing, because I was in a technology box in the Air Force for a little while for the chief, is watching the info war aspects of it and how, just because it came off the Resolute desk, man, the kids at the mainstream media, they just ate it like shad for a catfish.
Yeah. Some of this shit's entertaining.
Oh, yeah. The Cujo Vulcan mind melt was used and they walked in unopposed. There was no red jersey sacrificed in this operation.
I got asked about this off camera with a host of a place where I frequent. And because they wanted some background, they weren't going to interview me on the air. They just wanted some background. Hey, tell us about these types of weapons. What's going on here? And I said, well, first off, it's all PFM. And they go, what's that? And I go, pure fucking magic. And they're like, and I go, look, if we have a molecular vaporizer or a gonculator, you're not going to find out about it there.
No, you'll be on the receiving end. It'll only hurt a minute or two.
Jeez. Yeah. No, I think that if I might, to bring this back, what was done to extract Maduro was a precision strike against the Devil's Legions, the Praetorian Guard, right under their noses. And that had to be set up. It had to be planned. It had to be coordinated. That's massive. This is nation state level coordination. And we all like to poo-poo Venezuela, but Venezuela's around because they don't play small ball. Right. And they got a whole lot of intelligence, CIA, MI6 and everybody else's intelligence assets in there, Cuban intelligence assets, which I repeat myself. So,
I think Cuba's next on the docket, to be honest with you. I think Cuba's next.
Perhaps. I think Watkins has said something. Colonel Watkins said something, and some others as well. But Ecuador and Colombia are probably higher on the priority list than Cuba and Paraguay, right? Because Hezbollah is deeply dug into Paraguay as the central clearing point for most everything that happens in South and Central America. But again, this was a precision strike on Devil's Legion's assets that we've not seen in our lifetimes. Yeah. Not seen in our lifetimes. I don't even know the last time something like this happened.
Well, the thing, let's get back to the national security strategy and the ARC, America, Russia, China. They didn't bitch. No. There was no. So the coordination that happened in advance of this
Yep.
And, and thank you for just the amazing coincidence that a Chinese delegation would be on the ground. I think it's so much of a theatric in your face. It's more of a signature calling card that, I just did that with the Chinese on the ground. And I'm now taking these tankers and there's not a damn thing you're going to do about it. And so when we talk about the clash of the systems, again, it gets back to reaction. Are they rattling the folks that, your metaphor, EM, is at the high table? I think they are. I think they are rattling them.
Yes.
But that makes them more dangerous.
Was it Bannon or Roger Stone when the FBI raided and they had CNN there? And that was kind of like,
that was Roger Stone.
That was kind of like a fuck you. We're going to do this with impunity. Yeah. This was that times 1,000.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Nobody died at Roger Stone's house.
I know. This is not only that, but this is in another country. Like, fuck off. Watch this.
Yeah.
Well, and it goes back to, and I know there's 2 Air Force officers in here, so bear with me on this one. An Army officer calling this out. You don't send Chinooks or Apaches into a high threat area unless you have some damn good intelligence that they are in a relatively safe area and that the threat is small.
Or that the Ixians are on the ground and they turned off their Holtzman generators for Dune reference.
So there was a huge amount of coordination that occurred before those helos ever took off.
Yep.
And I mean,
let me give you an Air Force technical answer here. I will tell you that Venus probably has a smaller radar cross section than a Chinook.
Very true.
The planet.
Very true.
Yeah. Well, the turbulence that's thrown off. Yeah. No, I think we are seeing the unraveling, but very much Blaine, to what you said. We are not yet to the point to where those at the high table are fully, truly dangerous. We're just barely beginning, right? And they've got all their moves and counter moves and all this other kind of stuff. But what happened in Venezuela was just happened in Fulton County. The way in which Minnesota was dealt with, right, demonstrates that we do have some very intelligent and actually very capable people. Yep. And Blaine, to what you were articulating, there is no way we are doing this without a triangulation of China and Russia as well. Because you can't get that full intel picture unless you're triangulating intelligence from all 3 of these great powers. And while we went too much on the technical intelligence and sucking human and everything evermore, the Russians are extraordinarily good at human intelligence.
They are.
Yes, they are.
And the Chinese are extraordinarily good in human intelligence as well, but in a different way. Russians are very good at running assets and agents. What China is very good at, because they're a 4,500-year-old civilization that's been remade 18 times, they are really, really good at intel and analysis, right? So multi-source fusion, the Chinese are really good at that.
They're really good at strategically changing your conditions and your perceptions on the battlefield.
Yes.
So the misdirection capabilities that the Chinese have, if they're applied against the high table, I think they're extremely formidable. And the other part is, if you look at the opium wars, not just the ones the Chinese faced, but the one that we have faced, because it's all the same thing.
Right.
Yes.
The Chinese still hold a very deeply rooted grudge. If you want something to unify the Chinese, and I mean the Cantonese, the Mandarins, everybody, go ahead and bring up the British Empire and the Opium Wars.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
was it 100 years of what do they call it? 100 years of
they keep extending the timeline. Now it's 150 years.
But it didn't stop when Mao won either.
Yes.
The CIA specifically, with MI6, of course, relocated Chiang to Burma and then to the island of Formosa, which they just conveniently changed the name to Taiwan. Yes. That war went on for another 40 years. Yes. Taiwan, we brought Tibetans into Colorado to train them as terrorists to fight on the inside of China just so they could get their opium patch back.
The Dalai Lama has been on the CIA's payroll for over 50 years.
Yes. We would never do that. We would never do that. That's not how we operate. We do everything above board.
Thank you, Stephen. There's gambling in the casino?
The Uyghurs were taken out of China into Nepal terrorist training camps and inserted into China. That war never ended.
Correct.
And so China has, and I'm not a Mao, I'm not a communist, I'm not a sympathizer, but our history.
Had me fooled.
I know I get called a Russian bot all the time. Our history is so absent any real history. And if for no other reason to justify or to whatever the word is, the triangulation that we've been talking about of these three great powers, they want all of that to end.
Yes, because it terrifies them. Well, it terrifies them because they tried to destroy the Russians and failed. They tried to destroy the Chinese and failed. They're trying to destroy us, and now we're standing up, and it looks like, well, shit, we're going to fail there too. Well, now you've got the three great powers, right?
Aligned.
Three great powers aligned. You drove them into one another's camps. Now, again, Russia and us have been good friends since the very beginning, since we were colonies, right? And China as well. You know, there's the Burlingame Sword Treaty, where a Burlingame went to China and signed the Burlingame Sword Treaty that gave China nation status. So it was the United States of America and a treaty that gave the Chinese nation status to help them break away from the British in the mid-1800s, in 1867. So there's an old relationship there as well, right? And now those two powers are helping us again. So this triangulation has to be working on a global scale, or we wouldn't see, you know, World War III would have already started in one of these hot spots, and you know, folks would have died. I almost guarantee you the reason that Trump and some of the others are alive is because there's intel sharing.
I think that's why we haven't seen a major false flag too, is because of the intel sharing. I think
correct.
That's real.
Because
that's one of their favorite tactics.
Oh, absolutely. I want to go back to something you said last night on your show, because I caught part of your show last night, Colonel Watkins. You were talking about George Bush in Kenya, moving operations from the U.S. to Kenya. And I don't remember.
Safari Club.
I don't remember the context, but that applies here because that's exactly how the CIA does it. Is if they get caught doing malfeasance onshore, they will move it offshore and move all the players under an NGO. I think that was concatenated that, right? So
they're all in India now. All these operations that are getting rolled up in Qatar and Venezuela and elsewhere is all embedding in India, and they're flooding the world with Indians.
So the circumstances of that is critical because and this is something I just found out. I didn't realize JFK had actually cut 20% of the CIA before he was assassinated. When Jimmy Carter, and again, I'm not a Carter fan, you have to say that because everybody goes, oh my God. Jimmy Carter on the Halloween massacre, the first year he's in office, October 31st, he basically fires the entire covert operations infrastructure in the CIA. They didn't go away. He also snubbed George H.W. Bush by not keeping him on as the CIA director. He told him to go home. So all George H.W. Bush did, and all of his nefarious people, was they just relocated all of the covert capability over to Kenya, and under the guise of a thing called the Safari Club. And it's very hard to find information on it because, of course, we have the other Safari Club that's the,
conservationists.
Yeah. So, but if you search on Yandex under Safari Club in Kenya, you can find all the material on this. And Aiden Khashoggi, the weapons dealer, was involved in it. They just basically reconstituted what some people call the enterprise out of the CIA and just continued. People are under the impression that the CIA actually worked for the U.S. government. They never have. No. They have always operated as a Praetorian Guard for the oligarchs.
They're not working for us now. They're not working for us right now.
I agree.
So it's very important to understand that whatever Radcliffe tries to do inside of the CIA, they're just going to relocate and distribute that capability outside of the CIA. They've done it every single time anybody tried.
He has no OPCON operational control of the CIA, and no Cash has no OPCON of the FBI. The checks on them in the internal workings of the admin are Rubio and Tulsi, are working together, and they are a check on that deep state power that the other two have no opcon of their organizations on. And so then when you get to this Epstein crap that came out, they do have very sophisticated means of manipulation of evidence and tampering and contaminating the evidence. And they use real live evidence, and then they just inject the Easter eggs they want you to go find.
That's because people need to stop thinking that there's a difference between the CIA and the FBI. That's one super organization.
Oh, totally. Absolutely correct.
Yeah, and that was true with the State Department in the past. Their Foreign Service. As a matter of fact, one of the very first things I found out was that when John Foster Dulles and Alan Dulles was in charge of the State Department and the CIA, their sister, Eleanor Dulles, was in charge of an area that was called Research and Intelligence Division, which is the conduit into the State Department for the CIA at the time. Yeah. So they triangulated all of their nefarious activity. And when John Foster dies, Alan Dulles gets fired, and JFK fires Eleanor as well.
Yeah, those are the most destructive British agents that have ever operated and risen to the top in the United States. God,
is that not true? I bring that. By the way, thanks for that, because that is very salient. And General Holt went to exactly where I was going with that. Exactly, that operationally the FBI is completely still out of control, and all of those directors that were involved in January 6th and instigating that coup are all now directors at a higher level. And
but Stephen, there's a bifurcation, and so look at Atlanta. There's the non-deep state FBI in play. Look at Minneapolis, where they had zero assistance for ICE from the FBI, which should have had their happy butts out there. None, zero.
Because the FBI is fiefdoms. The FBI operates like fiefdoms, and the FBI also operates exactly as Colonel Watkins was saying. They have their own companies, they have their own banks, they have their own financial institutions. All these things were set up, for operational reasons, for getting into criminal, or under the auspices of getting into criminal organizations, all that. It's the exact same thing the CIA does. And so what happens when, and I may or might not have stumbled across this and known some of these people directly. I might still, but they get cushy jobs in an NGO, or they get a cushy job as the head of security for a billionaire family.
Yeah, you said exactly what I was going to say, right? About the fiefdoms, right? So you knew where I was going.
It's the same thing they do with the CIA, right? It's the real power of the FBI is not in the FBI; it's the former FBI guys, right? Former, right? It's the same thing. And by the way, when we were doing targeting, right? When I was a SOCPAC, I was in C11, but SOCPAC was doing targeting in PACOM. Every one of those target decks had to go through the FBI and DOJ.
Yeah.
So the FBI is not just engaged in targeting Americans.
Same in Europe. Same damn racket.
No,
that's why they stood up in the combatant command structure. They stood up this thing called the J9, which was the interagency directorate across all of the combatant commands. And then what I was struck by at UCOM, European Command, as a general, and I was there twice, but as a general, was the amount of power that the interagency directorate was wielding. It was unconscionable. I mean, you had, and it was always led by a civilian, SES, whose voice at the general officers table was louder than the others. Well, full disclosure, in my case, he was the matchmaker and set me up with my wife. but nonetheless,
so your wife's an agent.
Okay,
your wife's
she's a.
We know who this
well played.
It gets worse. It gets worse. She's a GIS. She was a GIS targeter for Socure.
See, you've arrived when they send an agent into your bed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Long term, right? Long term, not just the one-off.
Close.
Right.
Since we're off on this tangent, I want to add to that, because I think what's interesting is, since I started doing this 5 years ago, you would be surprised how many shady or mob organized people have approached me for.
I would not be surprised.
It is. The other thing that's interesting too is when I first started this, I unbewittingly got involved in the political game here, and I was literally in 2021 and 2022, I probably had 50 interlopers for some of the most wealthy Scottsdale elite reach out to me trying to help. So it's amazing that when you make them uncomfortable, they want to get you on the payroll so they can control you.
They want to help.
So General Holt, you're on the payroll. I got it. Thank you.
So
EM's been accusing me of that for months now.
I would like just to drive home the point that EM made. Look up Larry Devlin.
Why do I know that name?
Larry Devlin is a CIA guy that was put in charge of the assassination of Patrice Lumumba in the Congo. Mm. He was the CIA station chief. They actually drove Lumumba's body around in a CIA car after they had murdered him. And do you know where Larry Devlin ended up working after he retired from the CIA?
The FBI.
In the Congo. Oh. Working for Belgium and U.S. mining interest under the Maurice Templeton diamond, cobalt, and uranium. They go to work, and that just shows you the relationship.
Yep.
They murdered Patrice Lumumba on the day President Eisenhower gave his infamous January 17th speech about, oh my gosh, I think there's a military-industrial complex being built. Yeah. Same day, they murdered Patrice Lumumba, and didn't tell JFK coming into office on the 20th of January for over a month. The CIA sat in front of this man during every one of the transition briefings, knowing they were planning to murder him. Yeah. Eisenhower signed the finding, and he gets murdered, and JFK does not find out until February that his CIA murder, and he had a meeting with them talking about how he wanted to engage and free Lumumba, and they never told him he was dead.
Meanwhile, he was in the trunk of their car out in the parking lot of the White House.
Right. Roxanne, that was, hey, go to 2010 and our revolution in Kyrgyzstan. And I can't believe to this day how naive I was, because I worked in and amongst these people who orchestrated the entire thing. And then when we get to the corruption and the mafia crap of the fuel that was coming to my base, the tip-off should have been that a former defense attaché to the Kyrgyz embassy, army guy, he was the face of the Red Star fuel contractor that was bringing fuel to the base. And when things got shady and bad, this is the guy who was on the phone screaming bloody murder into my ears that I was screwing up everything because I wasn't in on the game.
Military attaché.
Yeah, his name wasn't Vindman, was it?
No, Vindman, but he's a Vindman twin brother. And the thing is, it wasn't until years after that that I would look back and go, damn. I was just sitting here playing it straight.
Yes.
Okay, I got a pair of twos. Let me draw another card. I'll see. And there's the station chief, and there's these other clowns just laughing at me.
Yes. And so you wouldn't find it at all surprising when I find the military attachés from the U.S. military were the handlers for Otto Skorzeny in Spain. They were setting up Operation Gladio throughout all of Europe in the immediate aftermath of World War II.
But you know the attaché mindset. These guys are declared and they're in country, and the smug arrogance and egos that gets attached to most of them. They just are ready to take another spoonful from whatever the station chief's going to feed them. And they think they really are 007 and a half. Yes. And so to your point, this clown stays in Kyrgyzstan, then leaves and then becomes the magic guy working for Red Star Energy so that we could quietly have Russian fuel getting into my tankers to go to Afghanistan.
Isn't that amazing?
One of the most dangerous things that we all need to realize is that 98% of the employees that, the management that runs all of this infrastructure aren't badged. They're not badged to the CIA, probably never have been. They come out of the Army. They come out, depending on what they're doing, they come out of the military. A lot of them come out of the military.
Plausible deniability.
Or they come out of, former, right? They're all former. Or they come out of the law enforcement, right? Those are the two, FBI, state level, certain states, et cetera.
Police chief ran the Office of Public Safety that built all the black sites in Operation Condor throughout Latin America. The Office of Public Safety were setting up torture prisons and arranging kidnappings and assassinations under USAID.
Yeah,
and they had half of their people from the former FBI and police in the United States.
Yeah, no, actually, you'll find American former police officers, all over the world doing jobs. You're like, what the hell are you doing here, right? But what people really need to understand is that down beneath all of these these higher level operator, leadership is this vast, deep array of managerial peoples who are, and I don't mean office kind of managerial, but very much Blaine, what you said, some guy who's running an oil company, a small oil company, or an oil logistics company, or some guy that's, got a small trucking company in the Philippines or a bush plane, in the Congo, et cetera. And there are tens of thousands of these guys around the world. And then there's tens of thousands more who are French, who are, British, who are, German somewhat, but really it's the French and the British are the ones we generally run across all over the world.
Well, I want to go back to something that feeds into that, and that is all these ex-CIA and FBI have flooded into social media as well, and they're
Bustamante
even
a lot of them follow me now.
I know they do, which is part of the reason why I called it out, because I'm like, that guy used to be
just make sure they're not in your rearview mirror.
They're probably that too, right?
Well, you want a bomb sniffing dog.
It just shows you how pervasive the system, because it's a system, right? We're not talking about an organization. We're talking about a system.
Correct.
That
it's an economy. It's a global economy that sits right within the actual global economy. That's how we have to think of it. It is a financial infrastructure and an economy that is parasitically living within the visible, knowable banking and finance and economic system.
And Epstein was in that ecosystem. He's not just one player, right? There's multiple players on the blackmail ops side that people need to keep in mind. Everybody's focused on these files, but I keep coming back to the same thing. And it's something that I have to remind my audience of all the time. Why now? Why now? Why is this information coming out now when it's been out there for 10 or 15, like the manifest? I was looking at the manifest in 2014. I mean, there's tons of names on the plane, and this bears repeating too. Trump was in the New York strata, and in that strata, you interact with other parts of the strata all the time. Peers. Whether you're intimately familiar with them or just you run into them
or you hate them.
You still run in those circles. You still go to those parties. You still ride on their jets. It's a courtesy. It's just part of the ecosystem that they live in, right? So it goes back to something you said earlier. Just because they're in the files doesn't mean they did anything, right?
Correct.
But some of the notorious pedophiles that are out there, we do know who they are, and there is documentation that those guys are pedophiles.
You know information warfare very well, right? So it's called DARVO, right? DARVO. You accuse the other of what you're doing before they can accuse you, and then you put out vast amounts of useless information, and then you go to war. Well, this is DARVO. It's very well done. They might or might not teach it in the schoolhouse, right? And cover for action and cover for status and all that kind of related stuff, right? Well, why now? Because things are getting ready to come out in actually probably unsealed indictments. No shit.
I agree.
Things,
I agree.
Right?
But I'm just
and
reminding.
So what are they doing? They're releasing it now because it's exactly what I'm saying. I'm going to accuse you of what I'm doing before you can accuse me. And then I'm going to cloud the information space. I'm going to get guilt by association of you. You're going to have to parse that apart, tear that apart, et cetera. And anything you do to move against me, I can now claim you're just doing retaliation.
And let me add to that, because I think here's the reason I bring that up, because it goes back to circling back to Fulton County. I don't think you're never going to see an indictment for child trafficking or child exploitation, unless they have stone cold evidence and caught you in the act. It's too hard to prove.
Yes.
You will see indictments for treason if this Fulton County evidence leads
treason. You're also going to see the big one that they tend to go after. Terribly sorry, Steve. The one that they tend to go after is wire fraud.
Yeah.
The technical one that they usually do, because they can do wire fraud, because if you do anything financially, if you've taken monies and you're moving it, the monies were earned illicitly, or you're part of an illicit transaction or defraudulent. So generally what they do is to go after these people, because again, very much to what you're saying, Steve, it's really hard to prove.
Yeah.
These really people did these things knowing full well they had to mask it with all the greatest masking possible. And the FBI was involved and CIA was involved, so they know how to do that. So what generally happens is you move to impoverish these people and put them in jail, and wire fraud is usually the one that, is usually the legal mechanism. What's that?
That's how they got the mafia.
That's how they got the mafia. It's exactly right.
Well, Scott Bessent, who arguably used to be playing for the other team, knows the FinCENT program like the back of his hand, and don't think for 5 seconds he's not using that as a spiderweb human terrain mapper asset forfeiture device that will only pick up speed from here.
So this is actually very, very good, Blaine. This is actually, I think, the information sharing between Russia, China, and America, ARC. Most likely the banking transactions onshore and offshore are the data that's being shared the most. Because because all of that does get tracked and monitored. Maybe it's a couple of steps and you got to work out some things, but they track and monitor all of that, because you don't want an insurgency mounted against you that you're not tracking, what we call threat finance. So you share that, and then that shows a financial transaction or financial transactions, and now you can associate these other things that are harder on their own to prove.
And that's why I think it's so important that most people kind of gloss over. Although we, I think, all agree that there are nefarious players still in the CIA and FBI, having access at the top to all of their systems is critically important. So even if you only have a trusted cell, as long as that cell is at the top of that organization, you have access to that information that is being fed to the DNI and Rubio in the scenarios that
even if it's just corroborating, even if it's not original source, right? So this brings up, Colonel, all of you actually. The Bongino thing interests me. I think his health's not good because he's still dealing with cancer, et cetera. So he wasn't going to be there long term and take this fight on. But I wonder what Bongino went there to look into. Very much, Colonel Watkins, to what you're saying.
Yes.
He went there for some specific purpose. Yes. He was a deputy director for a reason, because it gave him the highest level access, but he was there to look at specific things.
That's my assessment as well.
Colonel Murray, this might get to exactly what you're talking about on the pedophilia and the human and child trafficking and all of that. I don't know, though. It might also be, though, that he went there to look at the Secret Service issue.
Maybe.
Could be.
That's his origin.
That's his origin. He knows extraordinarily well, right?
Jury's still out on that one.
So it's interesting.
Well, 10 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Eastern on Monday should be an interesting day, because that's his very first podcast, and I'll be very interested to see what he says.
And now he's out, and he's of course he's still got some of the non-disclosures and all of that, right? But it's going to be very interesting, the narrative that comes out of Bongino. I'm very interested. And of course, that's why they went on the attack. The Republicans, the right, quote unquote right, went on the attack immediately against him.
Yeah.
Right. Is all to discredit him, et cetera. But I personally believe Bongino went there to look at very specific things. And I think he saw them. Right. And now it's a matter of, he can do better support from the outside.
To cycle back to everything we were talking about earlier, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget to touch on this, is Jerome Blaine said earlier, I think we've all kind of said, all these things are not unrelated. It's the puzzle pieces, and eating the crayons, of course. But to look at like the voting thing, Maduro, because what Maduro looked like a kid coming home from a sleepover they didn't want to be at. It reminds me of me when I was like 6 and I scared to do a sleepover. The mom and dad come get me. I'm just happy as a clam going. That's what it looked like. He was happy as a clam going home.
He gets to live.
Yeah, of course. Fulton County, obviously, and then Tulsi being there. So we've touched on that. We've touched on Venezuela, but as it pertains to Minneapolis, because since then there's been like the circulating like these are the demands, illegal this, illegal that, incarceration. But on the very first day, the very first of the demands was voter rolls, and that kind of hasn't come up again. I'm curious what any of y'all's thoughts are on that, because that was a weird, because it wasn't just something that it was the very first thing they said. It's like chaos is going on, and it's like how come Trump isn't sending the Marines? And it comes to a head of we need the voter roll. It was a very odd, and it hasn't come up again. But if you
what
look
year
at
is this? 2026.
Yeah,
term elections are the entire everything. Yeah, terribly sorry.
But it gives, and then it's hard to say, oh, that's nothing when they kidnap Maduro, and then the fucking DNI is at Fulton County.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what y'all's opinions are on that getting looped in, and how does that apply to Minneapolis? Because knuckle draggers like me are like, how come Trump hasn't bombed Minneapolis yet? Like he's a pussy. I
think that was a regrouping exercise.
Okay.
I really do. DHS their job is not to do crowd control and to do riot control. That's not their job. And when they were sending agents in onesie twosies and they were getting overwhelmed, that's a threat to the agents, right? So I think that whole operation to me was, hey, we need to pull back. We need to reassess. We have an insurgency. We know who they are. I think at the same time they were training Palantir how to identify all the cells and all the communication networks and all of the data elements that they were using. And they shut down one of the websites. I think it was yesterday that was posted. But I think they're just regrouping. The fact that they just rented a huge warehouse here in Arizona that was basically empty and sitting dormant tells me that they're getting ready to do. I think Eric Prince's plan finally hit the desk of President Trump, and he went, "Yeah, we should be doing this," and we'll see.
With respect to Minnesota, I suspect Minnesota, because Minnesota was a state in rebellion, and it was the easiest one to end the rebellion. Waltz and his lieutenant governor and all of them, they're nothings. They're absolute idiot children. So Minnesota was a state in rebellion. You don't want to overwhelm. You want to go in with all the different things. You want to highlight and draw it out into the open, the insanity and the money laundering, the money flows and et cetera. So you go in careful and you just steadily ramp up, and then you bring pressure on. Minnesota, as of right now, is not in rebellion anymore. So I suspect that was, okay, we've got 13 states basically in a rebellion. I'm just putting that number out there, right? Who knows what it really is, but we have at least 7 states in open rebellion, right? That was the lowest hanging fruit. It's not in rebellion anymore.
And Waltz announced he's not going to run for office again. That's a dude who heard, take the deal, motherfucker, because it's all you're going to get.
Yeah.
So if you were going to pick one of the states of the most
egregious,
egregious.
Yeah.
If you laid them out, you would pick Minnesota.
Yes.
Walz is complicit. His lieutenant governor was complicit.
Oh, yeah.
The city of Minneapolis was complicit. They just assassinated one of their state representatives who voted not to fund health care for illegals. They assassinated her.
He ordered it.
So if you're going to look at, you have to have the layers of criminality in order to get the network to activate, in order to trace the network. And you again, just putting on my Gladio hat, you see this type. I mean, they're even out in the streets. I posted this morning about banging pots. This is a tactic that the CIA used in other countries in order to generate foot soldiers. And I think I may have mentioned the Albert Einstein Institute before.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you look at their playbook and you see all of it unfolding in Minneapolis. Well, if you're going to map it and you're going to disable those networks, you would pick a Minnesota.
You have to pulse it. right? So you pulse it with some force, right? It's the same thing, electrical engineering. If I got a problem with a circuit board, right, and I got to figure out where that, or a circuit or semiconductor or whatever, I'm going to pulse it with a little bit of controlled energy, and I'm going to see what happens with electron flows. I'm going to see where the errors are, where the faults are, right? I'm going to map those out, and then I'm going to fix that circuit board. So they had to pulse it very much. Colonel Watkins would say they had to pulse it with this, and then see what that activated very much. And it, again, that state is not in rebellion now.
Yeah. And I think California, they're saving for dead last, because if you have to rate who's the most compromised, it'd be California, Washington, Oregon, Maine, Massachusetts. You can go down the list, but California is the most compromised of all of them.
The three that are the most difficult, however, to address this is California, New York, and Texas.
I didn't get to New York yet. That's a whole separate.
California, New York, and Texas. Those are going to be the really hard ones to turn around. Washington, Oregon, yes. Maine, the others, those are small players. But those three states are what you take off last, because that could actually go to blood.
Why are those three California and New York, low-hanging fruit, I'd say population size, economy size. But
New York's a special case, though, because there's still a heavy influence of old money there. And they're all involved.
It's financialist. It is the financialist headquarters, right? And so they are embedded there, and they own all of it. And they've been flooding in. They put Mamdani there because they got a general who would use New York City's army, basically the NYPD, to go after anyone and anybody. And the state out of Albany, the Holt will use state assets, and they'll just assassinate people.
And where did Mamdani come from? Oh, his dad was brought over here on an educational scholarship funded by the CIA.
Oh.
Go figure.
Just fun little,
funny how all roads lead back to the intelligence agencies. It's amazing how that works. It's shocking almost.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are the three states that are really the big ones. All the others will get picked off. I think Minnesota's a brilliant operation. I think it was a brilliant operation. Yeah. Which gives me hope, by the way, right?
Yeah.
So I guess my last point, or last thing to add to this is, so with 2026 midterms, 2028 election, I've always thought that, anything Trump's doing, any of these long-term shifts, and what, kind of the general idea of, you bring up EM and others have brought up that this is the cresting end of a wave that started with the assassination of Kennedy, right? It's a counterattack that's lasted almost a century, all well and good. None of it sticks if the voting process is rotted through it, right? Correct. That's the weakest link. You can have the most intricate radar system, but if I could just unplug it, it doesn't matter. That's my, and I would imagine, right, that has to have been war gamed out, and that's why you're doing, because none of this matters if in the middle of the night in 2026 at 4 a.m. you go to bed and all the guys are winning. You wake up and you go, well, fucking hell, I can't believe Biden got 8.5 trillion votes in Atlanta. Interesting. I thought the population of the planet was 1% of 1%. But so that's kind of my question. So if you're doing all of this stuff now, you are pushing them into making them a cornered animal. Meaning that if their only option is to steal an election, it's not their only option, but it's just in terms of stealing elections, they would dial it up to 1 trillion. They don't care how obvious it is. They don't care if a pipe bursts in every precinct in the United States at the same time. That I would imagine then, if you're pushing them into that, you would have also plugged up that gap.
Which is why you have to have control of the voter rolls.
Yeah. So Lane and I had this conversation the other night. Don't think that we are seeing even a fraction of what's happening here to do the best possible to have a legitimate or within the 0.5 error rate election in 2026. And that means there is a lot of pressure being brought. And this is also why I think the Epstein list hasn't been released, and some other things, is a lot of the high net worth donors who are the ones who back and fund all of the theft. I'm very certain that there's been conversations had with them. Further information out of Fulton, right, which will, again, sends a pulse, right? And then everybody gets on the phone and they're, yeah. And then we listen to that. But don't think for a second there isn't a vast amount of things happening behind the scenes with the high net worth donors, that if you want to keep your illicit gains, if you don't want to go to jail for wire fraud or whatever it is, or a Madoff scheme, then you're not going to put you vote however you want to, right? That's your right, but you're not going to put, in all these diverse ways, you're not going to put money into these elections. You're not going to sway.
Yeah.
And it's the only way Trump got in 2024, by the way, in 2016, right?
That's what I was curious about I think I was saying this to Clay yesterday. So if they steal it in 2020 when he is the president, and I'm not naive, I know the president doesn't have total control, obviously, but it gets stolen when he is the president, and then he manages to get back in when he's not the president. Those are two wildly different stances of power or perceived power. How did he get in 2024? That's what I think. I understand why.
It's a layered combination. It's what EM's talking about, but there were some guardians, if you will, white hats, if you will, that did some electronic things in other countries that will come out eventually.
Correct.
But could not have happened without that type of assistance. And the thing was,
1,000%.
the breadcrumbs of the 2020 theft, they're not very imaginative people. They went right back to the very same types of countries to go elicit that type of help, and the white hats were there to stop that.
Yeah, so I'll give you one other piece, right? If it was not for the traitors within his own house in 2020, the 2020 election would not have gone the way it went. We were not ready for a civil war. The enemy was. And so then the transition in January 2020 was, okay, we don't have the loyalty in the House to go do the legal things, particularly Barr, right? AG Barr was the worst traitor in Pence, right?
CIA.
Go figure, right? And what's the Barr family's relationship with Epstein?
His dad hired him at Dalton.
Right. Okay.
And his dad wrote a book about a utopia where the globalists have child sex slaves.
Yes.
Fun fact.
So what's happened in 2020 is the realization that the enemy is ready to go to civil war. If we press beyond this, we don't have the loyalty in our own house, right? And then they made a realization, okay, the American people, including high net worth individuals, don't realize how corrupt this system is. We're going to let it stand, and we're going to draw all this out in the open. And if you look at everything that happened from December 2019 all the way into today, it's just been drawing. They've just been, okay, come on, right? Trump got a $200 million line of credit from somewhere to help with all the lawfare, right? So he wasn't burning his own assets and his own cash flow, right? Because most people don't realize most billionaires don't have a lot of cash.
Right.
They're about so leveraged. It is unreal how leveraged they are. And the one thing that they don't take out, the one thing that they don't ever, that's sacrosanct, is cash flow, right? So if they're going to take on a fight, they need support from, a cash flow system outside. But I suspect what happened in 2020 was a realization of where the enemy really was, how infiltrated the enemy was, how unwitting the American people and, the intelligentsia, actual good ones, and a lot of the elites were. And it's like, okay, well, we're going to draw them out into the open. By 2024, enough of that had happened, right? So blatantly and so obviously. And then how over the top that whole administration, everybody around went, with everything they did. People were finally like, okay, well, let's get him back in office. And when I say people, I don't just mean the common person, but I mean wealthy elites that he didn't have before. And they're like, okay, we have to do this. In 2026, we have to do that as well, but it's got to be legitimate. That's the one thing on our side. It's got to be legitimate. It's got to have an audit trail. The audit trail's got to be solid, right? Video evidence, all of that. We have to make sure.
But that doesn't mean we shun legitimate law enforcement of incumbents who have it coming.
Absolutely.
Right.
Right. But for this class of people, if you're going to bring legal action against them, you better not miss.
You better be bulletproof.
You better not miss. Yeah.
The reactions, like Mark Warner and the others, Lindsey Graham even's piping up, the reactions indicate to me they're extremely nervous that the onion's getting peeled.
I agree.
I
and
would
not
love
just at the
nothing
federal
better
level.
than to see Lindsey Graham rolled up.
Oh, honey, you and me too.
I'd like to see Lindsey Graham and General Pop at San Quentin.
That takes up
enjoy
space.
That too much.
That takes up meals, space, logistics.
No. Let the boys at San Quentin have their fun.
Lindsey Graham sounds so gay. I was listening to that clip.
Isn't Alcatraz ready yet?
I don't think so. I think it's still under renovation.
Well, listen, another encouraging indicator and warning is my buddy Catherine Herod. She's spending a hell of a lot of time down at Gitmo reporting from there.
Oh, wow.
That's a good one too.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm cautiously. I don't know. I guess in general, for me, it's like the fact that they haven't killed Trump and the fact that he won. I'm like that.
Tommy, here's a cool thing. If we don't win here, dude, we're cooked. The nice thing is we have no choice.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of it.
There is zero choice. It's not an option.
I have no illusions about that. But I just certain things I look for as evidence that it doesn't necessarily mean it's won, but it means that it hasn't been lost. And I just look, they would have taken his head off by now.
Yeah. But going back to the Kennedy assassination, it's always been a cycle of, well, we lost here, we'll pitch another battle somewhere else. Well, we lost here, we'll pitch another battle somewhere else. No, there's no more battle pitching.
Yeah, there's no more time left on the clock. Yeah,
that's right.
We're all in. I want to take something back. I actually now think that this was all set in motion when they shot Teddy Roosevelt. I think it goes back before the Kennedys now because of something a couple of people have said.
The timing makes sense.
Right.
Think about it.
And then look at his cousin comes into the president. Yep. He's elected 3 times. He makes all these changes right. And then he dies. Maybe he gets assassinated. He gets poisoned. So I really now suspect that maybe this counter movement actually really started when they shot Teddy Roosevelt in the chest, and then he went and did the speech anyways, right?
Badass.
Piss off a Roosevelt, a New Yorker. It would also articulate why so much of the locus of all of this is New York.
I would agree that
right.
I would agree that New York is the catalyst for a lot of what we're seeing. And it's a let's just say HQ for the system.
Yeah. It is a Praetorian head outpost, right? Yeah.
I'm tongue tied because I know that Colonel Watkins is going to chew on this one because she's done a lot of work on this one. The one thing we haven't seen yet that I'm waiting to see is widespread cyber attacks on different industries that are going to impact any kind of activity related to Fulton County, e.g. Smartmatic doesn't exist, Dominion doesn't exist. Why haven't we seen the cyber attacks around that to destroy some of that information or at least ransom it? We haven't seen that either, right? So I'm waiting for that. And I know you've talked about this on a couple of shows in a different format.
A lot of, and I'm just going off of allegations, the destruction at the AT&T building in Nashville housed a lot of the Fulton County cyber information. And that was done over the Christmas holiday.
Like there's where they came on the intercom and the RV or whatever the fuck.
Which was the most ridiculous. I actually have a video of that building. I went there not very long after that. Yeah. It is so ridiculous, the story.
I know. Who is in the narrative department? Because you got to make it make sense, man.
They were so bad.
It's like the Charlie Kirk story. Oh, Colonel Mustard Pipe Wrench Conservatory. That's what happened. Everybody look away.
It was so bad. Nothing about what they said happened. I mean, And I mean, I've seen the bomb damage assessment of Kobar Towers and Oklahoma and a lot of their other activity. Nothing about the Nashville bombing made sense.
That's why I bring it up, because the funny thing about being in IT is there's always a backup somewhere. Just saying, I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for that backup to show up and that information to show up somewhere. I don't know, maybe NSA or
somewhere.
Could be, one of those 3-letter or 4-letter organizations within NSA that's done some deep details on that. Just saying, might start with a T, maybe may have an O in there somewhere. Just saying.
There's I don't believe that it doesn't exist. For better or worse, you can't delete anything.
Though, but here's the other thing too. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is the one thing we don't talk about is cyber, right? It's the one thing we never talk about. Like all these airline issues over the past several months, nobody's talking, like the ship, nobody's talking about a cyber intervention on any of these activities. And we're talking around the system. It tells me that Trump has some very, very good tech bros that are on his side, on our side, that are preventing some, because this is not our friend.
No.
The director, don't even get me started.
The interim director, he is a piece of work.
Oh, yeah.
And Krebs before him was a piece of work.
So is Jen Easterly. So
the Biden administration,
don't even get me fucking started on her.
The junta, right? The junta should not have gone against Eric Schmidt and Elon Musk and others. Shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have gone after Peter Thiel. I hate to say this, but the smartest people in the United States they were up to about 15 years ago, all in Silicon Valley. In fact, from most of the smartest people from all over the world were there in Silicon Valley for over 25 years. And many of them went back to their own countries, Russia, China, elsewhere, and have major tech companies.
Well, and you notice no one ever talks about the commissioning of the Silicon Valley people into the military unit.
Yeah, no, I brought that.
They all lieutenant colonels.
Yeah, they all just got that like fun little badge. Yeah, they was in the news for like a day.
Yeah.
No, I looked at that and I was like, oh, something's no.
Yeah. Well,
don't even get me started. Don't
Doge, right? Everybody's like, oh, Doge, it failed. Sorry, those kids only needed like 4 days, right? They didn't need a department or no. They just needed like 3-4 days, some monster, right? They didn't even need cocaine anymore. We've matured past that with our youngsters now, right?
Well, the lieutenant colonel thing is interesting because it makes me want, because they don't need to commission guys to put them into classified environments. They can put them into a classified environment through a contract or contract vehicle, and they can do public-private partnerships at a classified level. So that's significant for a couple of reasons. One, you have to ask the question: what are they controlling? 2, what are they trying to hide? And 3, most importantly, what's the capability of what they're trying to hide? That's part of why I'm bringing up cyber, because it's one piece of this that we've left out of this whole conversation is what's the cyber play in all of this? Right?
Yeah, sorry, Steve. Yeah, it totally has to be the cyber, because the only other profession that does that is the medical. Where they'll bring a medical doctor in that's got a 10-year practice.
They do medical, legal, and chaplain.
And legal. Yeah, terribly sorry. Yeah, legal as well. And I don't pay attention to the chaplains very much, but yeah, it's one of these. Not to be disrespectful to them, right? But yeah, it's usually only one of these high skill, high end, and the only ones that they bring across that they put into as lieutenant colonel and not a captain are people that have substantive, skill sets that are required.
Very unusual.
Yeah.
Also subjective to the UCMJ too.
Well, this is true, right? This is absolutely true, which goes way beyond a NDA.
Yes.
Right.
Way
beyond an NDA. Yeah. So one wonders if at some point the Pentagon is going to pass a actual financial audit. So there's the cyber side of things, right? Cyber warfare side of things, information warfare side of things, and countering all that primarily, right? But the other side is getting into all these old arcane systems, many of which still run on COBOL for any of you tech people, And getting into these systems and getting the trails, right? All this information trails, getting into storage media, getting into all these information trails of where did that $20 trillion that went through the Pentagon and disappeared really go? And who was really related?
You realize that's a 2-hour conversation if we dig into that.
Yeah. But I'm just in support of what you're saying. Yes, on one side is the cyber operations side, but on the other side, like Doge did with the big federal government that has more updated systems than the Pentagon does and the DOW, right? You would need, if you were going to do a true mapping out of all of this, literally, I don't remember the number, it's something over $20 trillion over the last 60 years or so. You would need some people with some pretty serious technological chops to do that.
Well, that's my point, is we haven't seen any of those attacks. And I thought we would see them like within 6 months of Trump taking office. And so, especially when Doge started, I thought for sure we would see all kinds of ransomware.
Russia and China are helping too, by the way.
I think one of the things you should look at is when you red team this a little bit and you look at the cyber stuff that you do get to see that are attacks around the world, various one kind or another. I look at those almost as operational rehearsals that could be brought together in a more synergistic way. If you get down to where the enemy is sitting there with a Hail Mary pass situation, this also could involve a combination of cyber polystab teams on the ground that use pulsed EMP and all kinds of different tools to just basically shut everything down if it looks like the kids at the high table are threatened.
We can also use targeted energy weapons to hack
absolutely
technical systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, with electromagnetic field integration, et cetera. Yep. I want to touch on something, Steve, because this is your area. Colonel Watkins, you pay attention to these, and then Blaine, you touch on everything. There have been cyber attacks steadily, but they've been against major companies like Twitter and Tesla and Microsoft and Google and others. And one wonders, you know, again, as Blaine said, right, if I'm putting on my red team hat, I'm putting on my compromise hat, I'm going after the enemy. And that enemy is these high-end tech companies, right, who spend vast fortunes on their cybersecurity. I might let them know that if they act against us, you know, the government, if they move against us, the military, if they decide to side against us with, you know, the insurrectionists and the insurrectionist states, we can bring your company down remotely.
That was CrowdStrike. That was a CrowdStrike hack. That's exactly what that was. Because that hack should have never made it through QA.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it should have never made it through QA. They should have caught that almost immediately. And the fact that it was released into the wild and took down so many segments, that was a message. Because if you watch the CEO when he did his press conference, that dude was scared. That was not a guy that was like, yeah, we got a problem, we're going to fix. That dude was scared. So to me is exactly what you're taught. That was the warning shot to all of the different industries and the tech bros. Hey, you get on board or we take you down. Because what's the one piece of software on every piece of equipment that we all own and we take for granted? It's antivirus. What's the one piece of software that has the most access to the operating system and trust?
The kernel. Yeah. The kernel of the operating system.
It's some kind of malware detection system, right?
Oh, I have NSA buddies, really high tech guys, like way beyond anything I've ever done. And they tell me straight up, don't put antivirus on your computers. Just use Windows Defender, They tell you don't do it. Now, you still use a VPN and you do all that, right? It's Steve, to what you're articulating. It's a very interesting tell that when Trump and company went to see the British last time, they went to Windsor Castle first, and they had dinner with the monarch, you know, the king and the crown prince, and many of the tech CEOs whose companies are all who have major funds and company headquarters in Ireland. And there was, you know, so again, I believe that there has been a concerted effort, because it's what I would do. It's a front in the war. You have to do is you have to let, you know, the tech industries, the tech giants who are all backed by In-Q-Tel. They were all created by In-Q-Tel. Every single one of them spins out of DARPA through In-Q-Tel, right? it's letting them know we can just bring your whole company down. And now your $1 trillion in stock is gone.
You mean
gone.
Bill Gates didn't buy DOS? Really? He didn't buy DOS?
For $55,000 or $25,000. Well, he probably did, but DOS wasn't the issue.
Because they told him to.
Correct. And oh, by the way, that was the IBM contract. People didn't go look it up. His mother sat on the board of IBM.
She did. That's right.
That's how he got the contract.
That's right.
And
Eric Schmidt did not do Google.
Correct.
None of them did anything.
Wasn't Bezos' grandpa? Wasn't Bezos his grandpa in DARPA or ARPA?
Co-founder of DARPA.
So,
on his mother's
but
side.
doesn't it make sense?
Yeah.
You give these golden kinder that come from these amazingly wealthy American families the keys to the DARPA machines that get thrown out there, and then you turn right around and you compromise every last one of them, like Reid Hoffman with the Epstein shit. Now they're under
heaven
complete
forbid they
control.
get a conscience, right?
You'll be rich. You'll be rich,
sense.
but you're going to do what we want.
Stop applying logic where logic applies. We don't do that here. Could you just stop that, please?
We do in war fighting. War fighting is the last place where we actually have to apply logic.
I know.
What company was behind the computerized system the CIA used in the Phoenix program and Operation Condor? IBM.
Yeah. And what was
it called in Operation Condor? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
What was the guy? He ran for president. Goofy guy, Texan.
You're going to have to get more.
Ross Perot.
Remember Ross?
So many goofy guys.
Mr. EDS.
Except for me. I'm only 4'2", but I know everything.
Now look at this chart right here.
Yeah, here's my chart.
Look at all that Ross Perot
was
involved in, and then look where he was directed to use his monies, and that's the other thing. Look where these tech people put their what NGOs focus on, etc. Right? They're all owned by this Praetorian system, and controlled. Their securities, again, back to the security teams, are Devil's Legion's assets. Straight up, every single one of them. They cannot get security teams that aren't Devil's Legion's assets. I might not know this personally, right? So
modeled after Rockefeller and Ford
Correct.
And all of
that. So the thought that these people are operating independently and that they are power is ludicrous.
Yeah. Tommy, I have a hard stop in a couple of minutes here.
Me too.
Yeah, we're good.
I did want to say one thing before I punch out of here. I truly honored to be on this and be invited to this. Truly, I mean that.
Me too.
It's
man.
Me too. This conversation always. Well, first of all, every time I talk to EM on the phone, it takes me 3 days to decompress from all the history that he throws at me, and it's like a black hole of knowledge that I can never come out of. But I truly
beats me on all
because,
these, all of her details and everything. It's like,
wow. It's yeoman's work on Gladio, because it's things I thought I knew, but I realized I didn't know, and I realized how incompetent I really was at that. The one thing I want to leave everybody with is, no matter what happens in the news space and the Twitter space in the next 14 days, stay out of the emotional space. Don't get emotionally attached to any of it. Very smart. You're going to see a bunch of emotional stuff that's packaged and delivered. You don't know if it's real. You don't know if it's staged or contrived. Just stay out of the emotional space. Let the situation develop, and then make decisions from there.
Yeah, I'm working out February because of this very reason. I can see it spinning up, and I'm like, I don't need it.
It's
deuces.
Right.
Well, it's one thing. It's one thing Steve and I have talked about before, is the importance of even like 10 minutes of meditation a day. Just at the very core, something can be totally fucked, but even just coming from a mindset of like, I'm watching it fuck.
I walk in the woods,
but I'm gonna. It's more succinctly put it, you'll see people tweet. It happened a lot during Hurricane Helene when FEMA was denying assets, and people would just come out and say, I will not Fed post. I will not Fed post. I will not incite violence. It was just sort of a mantra, like give it a day. And I think that's probably the best advice.
Now, I'll take my final comment to the other side of this, which is I like where we're at. I think we're on a good track. I think I see the inklings of what the path to what the president's trying to accomplish. That said, the bad guys, and I mean the shadowy ones that you never get to see their faces, know who they are, and all of that. We cannot stop here with a Pyrrhic victory. They are going to have to be dealt with, and ruthlessly. I mean, ruthlessly, and in a
Chemotherapy.
way that would make Genghis Khan blush. That's my final
You have
parting
to, or it
shot.
will come back. You have to take out all the cancer cells.
Quickly. It'll come back quickly.
And it's 20 to 40 year program process. This isn't going to be over in this administration.
I agree.
Or the next or the one after that. Yeah. Colonel Watkins.
I agree with all of that.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
So more often than not, I do these shows. I just finish it, and I'm just like, I just feel like I got in a fight, like I got screamed at, like I'm going through drug withdrawals. I'm always like, gee, I'll tell my mom this stuff. I'll be like, hey, I'm so wound up, and she'll be like, I watch a 30-year shows and I'm wound up. Like, and I'm like, that's a good point. It's like
I'm about to go on the air nationally, and I don't know that I'm in a really good mental place to go do that right now.
Yeah,
so
you are.
I feed off of you guys. I get the energy to go shit post even more.
Oh, well, you got a channel. It's got to go somewhere. You got to go. You just got to channel it somewhere.
Just keep attacking the slime balls in the swamp, Roxanne, because it really does improve my morale every single day.
Here's the news that we need to hold on to. Russia did it. China did it.
Right.
We can do it too. Right.
That's right. That's right.
And we are in the process. And 4 years ago, we weren't here. So Russia and China did it. We can do it. Yeah.
True that.
All right. Everybody.
Out here, guys.
Guys, thank you so much for your time. Everybody watching, please go in the description. Please go follow the Twitters, YouTube, Substack, all that good stuff. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Till next time. Hey guys, real quick, you guys know Basil Baz, ARC, the Association for the Recovery of Children. I just did a fundraiser with them the other day, and I'm going to put this onto every episode I do. They are special forces veterans who physically rescue trafficked children. They have since 1993. They have a 100% success rate. They do not take salaries. They all have day jobs, and they literally rescue sex trafficked children. Donations to them are a tax write-off. I get nothing from them, and they have not asked me to put this on. I've included this little clip on episodes for the last year or so, and I'm just re-recording it because I just got to meet him just 2 days ago for future. It's November 25th, 2025, but this will be on every episode now for the next year. And there is nothing better you can do with your money. If you can support them for even $5, please do that. They truly are doing the Lord's work, and I think we all have an obligation to do that. Thank you so much.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com.
Hey guys, a huge sponsor of the show is Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food. Clayton lives down in Georgia. He's been on the show before. It's actually nearby where I went to college. They are a huge sponsor of the show. They give me some money every month, even when I don't sell enough to warrant that paycheck, meaning that the show is not free. It's just that it's free for you. If you guys need prepper food, or if you're just interested in supporting the show, I'd please ask you to go to the link in the description. Go to Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food, promo code TPC for 10% off. 72 servings per pail, 25-year shelf life. These things are, they double as dumbbells. Pasta Primavera, cheesy potato soup, mac and cheese, loaded baked potato casserole, chili mac, cheddar broccoli soup, cheesy lasagna, teriyaki rice. You can get banana chips. There's also raspberries, strawberries, and apples. There's a bunch of freeze-dried fruit, or you can even get seeds to plant your own garden. It's not a bad thing to have. It's like gold or ammunition. It's a good thing to have. It's a bad thing if you have to use it, but it's good. It's good to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. So that's what I'd say. And if you just want to support the show, please go to the link in the description. Please go support them because they support me. Thank you so much, guys.